My name is Nora Whitaker, and on the morning my brother locked me out of our parents' house, the rain had the steady, ugly sound of coins being thrown against glass. It was 7:18 on a Wednesday in Columbus, Ohio, cold enough for my breath to fog in front of me, and the grass on Sycamore Hill still held the flattened tracks from the funeral tent. My black dress was folded in a grocery bag on the passenger seat because I had gone straight from a 12-hour night shift to pick up my mother's medication records from the hospice office. The house still smelled like lilies, furniture polish, and the weak coffee my father used to burn every morning because he refused to replace the old percolator. Then I saw my belongings on the lawn. 2 cardboard boxes had split open under the rain. My nursing textbooks were swollen at the edges. My mother's blue cardigan, the one she wore after chemotherapy because the house always felt too cold, was half buried in wet leaves near the porch steps. My framed license from the Ohio Board of Nursing lay face down in the mud, the glass cracked across my name like someone had drawn a line through me. Caleb stood by the front door with a locksmith behind him. He wore a charcoal overcoat, polished shoes, and the calm expression of a man who believed the world had been built to clear a path for him. His wife, Lauren, waited inside the doorway with her arms crossed, her diamond bracelet catching the porch light every time she moved. The keypad lock blinked green once, then red, then went silent. That sound stayed with me. "Nora," Caleb said, as if he had been expecting me, as if this was a meeting he had generously agreed to attend. "You can't keep living here." I looked at the boxes. I looked at the lock. I looked at the rain sliding down the brass numbers beside the door. 416, the address I had memorized before I could write my own name. "Our parents were buried 5 days ago," I said. Caleb's face did not change. "Dad made his position clear years ago. Sons inherit the family home. Daughters take what they need and move on." Lauren gave a soft little sigh from inside the doorway, the kind people make when they want their cruelty to sound like patience. "This doesn't have to be dramatic." Nothing in me moved toward drama. For most of my life, I had been trained out of it. When my father praised Caleb for getting a B in economics and ignored my scholarship letter from Ohio State, I cleared the plates. When Caleb crashed Dad's truck at 20 and my parents called it a mistake, while my missing curfew at 17 became a lecture about female responsibility, I apologized. When my mother got sick and everyone suddenly remembered that nursing was a useful career after all, I changed my schedule, cut my hours, and slept in a recliner beside her bed for 21 months. Caleb visited 4 times. 4. Not 4 weeks, not 4 months. 4 visits in almost 2 years. Each time he arrived smelling like expensive cologne and office air, kissed my mother on the forehead, asked if she needed anything in the same tone people use when they already know the answer, and left before the ice melted in his water glass. Lauren came once, stood in the hallway taking pictures of the crown molding, and told me the kitchen would look more current with white cabinets. I had not forgotten that, but I did not raise my voice on the porch. I did not beg. I did not remind him that I had administered Mom's injections at 2:15 a.m., cleaned Dad's walker after his falls, argued with insurance adjusters, driven through sleet to the James Cancer Center, and missed so many shifts that my own savings dropped below $2,900. I took out my phone and photographed every box. Caleb noticed. "What are you doing?" "Documenting the condition of my property." His mouth tightened. "Don't start that audit nonsense with me." That was what he called it whenever facts inconvenienced him. Audit nonsense. At Riverside Mercy Hospital, I was not just a nurse anymore. I was the clinical documentation auditor who could spot a backdated chart note by the rhythm of the timestamps. I knew how people lied on paper. I knew how they hid a crime behind a form, a password reset, a missing signature, a nice folder with a bank logo on the front. Caleb had forgotten that. Lauren stepped onto the porch and lowered her voice. "Your brother is trying to be fair. He's willing to give you a little time to find an apartment." "A little time?" 10 days, Caleb said. "And because I'm not heartless, I'll give you $8,000 once you sign the release." He pulled a document from under his arm, 3 pages, clipped neatly, already marked with yellow tabs. I saw my name typed in the middle of the first page. I saw phrases like, no further claim, and voluntary surrender, and personal property abandoned. The rain made a soft ticking sound on the plastic document sleeve. "No," I said. Caleb blinked. "Excuse me?" "No. You haven't even read it." I heard enough. For a moment, his face became my father's face. Not physically. Caleb had softer features, lighter hair, better teeth, all the polished advantages Dad had paid for. But the entitlement was identical. That old male certainty, passed down like furniture, that if a woman refused to obey, the problem was not the demand. It was her tone. "You're making this ugly," he said. "You changed the locks." "You were a guest here." "I lived here." "You were useful here." The words landed quietly. No thunder, no music, no dramatic shift in the weather. Just Caleb's sentence hanging in the rain between us, honest by accident. Lauren looked at him quickly. Even she knew he had said too much. I put my phone back into my coat pocket. I picked up my mother's cardigan from the leaves, folded it once, and placed it inside the least damaged box. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I had imagined grief as something loud, but that morning it became a flat, cold line inside my chest. Caleb mistook it for weakness. "You'll come around," he said. "You always do." I carried 2 boxes to my car. The cracked frame cut my palm through the cardboard, and a thin red line opened near my thumb. I watched blood mix with rainwater on my skin. Behind me, the new lock clicked again. That was the last time Caleb Whitaker believed I was alone. To understand what happened next, you need to understand our house. The Whitaker house was not a mansion, no matter how Lauren described it online. It was a 3-story brick home built in 1928, with narrow hallways, stubborn windows, and an old maple tree that scraped the roof whenever the wind came in from the west. My mother planted rosemary by the kitchen steps and lavender along the back fence, and in the summer, the air smelled like warm brick, cut grass, and those purple flowers she loved more than jewelry. My father, Thomas Whitaker, believed in sons. He never announced it like a villain in a movie. He did not pound the table or quote scripture. He simply organized our lives around Caleb's importance. Caleb got private baseball coaching, then a business degree from Miami University, then a down payment on his first condo, then introductions to men who wore golf shirts with country club logos and pretended networking was character. I got chores. When I told Dad I wanted to become a nurse, he said, "That's practical. You'll always have something to fall back on after marriage." When I said I wanted to continue into compliance and forensic chart review, he frowned like I had used a foreign word. "Why make things complicated? You're good with sick people. Stay where you're useful." Useful. That word followed me for years. My mother heard it too. Miriam Whitaker had a gentle face and a spine no one noticed until it mattered. For most of my childhood, I thought she was quiet because she agreed with Dad. Later, I understood that silence can be strategy when you are married to a man who mistakes volume for truth. She watched everything. She watched Caleb take. She watched Dad excuse him. She watched me earn every credential with scholarships, night shifts, and cheap diner coffee that tasted like burned metal. She watched me move back into the house when her ovarian cancer returned for the second time. Stage 3, lymph nodes involved. Treatment plan printed on 7 pages that smelled like hospital toner. And while I drove her to infusions, she took notes. At first, I thought the small red binder on her nightstand was for medical questions. She kept her medication schedule there, her blood pressure readings, the name of every doctor, every dosage, every side effect. Later, she started asking me to drive her downtown once a month to an office building on East Broad Street with smoked glass doors and an elevator that always smelled faintly of dust and peppermint gum. "Insurance paperwork," she told me. I believed her. I sat in the lobby and answered work emails while she met with a lawyer named Patricia Sloan. Every time Mom came out, she looked tired but lighter, like someone had removed a stone from her coat pocket. Once, in the car, she reached across the console and squeezed my wrist. "You are not what they say you are," she said. I laughed softly because I thought she was comforting me. "I know, Mom." "No," she said, and her voice had a firmness I rarely heard. "You don't, but you will." 3 weeks before the crash, her scans were clear. We celebrated at a small Italian restaurant near German Village, where Dad complained about the price of scallops, and Mom ordered tiramisu, even though she said sugar tasted strange after chemo. She smiled more that night than she had in months. Her hair had grown back in soft gray curls, and she kept touching it as if confirming she was still here. "I want to see my mother," she said after dessert. Grandma Evelyn lived in Dayton, 91 years old, sharp enough to beat everyone at cards, and meat enough to keep death waiting in the hallway. Dad had promised to drive Mom there for months. He finally agreed on a Saturday morning. They never made it. A box truck crossed the center line on Interstate 70 at 11:42 a.m. The police report said the driver had been awake for 19 hours. The impact folded the front of my father's Buick into the guardrail. The state trooper who called me spoke slowly, carefully, with the practiced sadness of a man who had given bad news too many times. I was standing outside room 612 with a medication cart when my phone rang. After the funeral, everything moved with a cruel efficiency. Flowers arrived, casseroles arrived. People I barely knew hugged me and said my parents were together now, as if together was a word that could fill an empty house. Caleb gave the eulogy and spoke for 16 minutes about Dad's discipline, Dad's business sense, Dad's legacy. He mentioned Mom for 40 seconds. That night, while I rinsed casserole dishes in the kitchen, I heard Lauren whisper in the dining room, "Do you think the house will appraise over $750?" Caleb answered, "Closer to $8 if we wait until spring." I stood with my hands in dishwater that had gone cold. Then came the lockout. I slept the next 2 nights on my friend Angela's couch in Westerville. The apartment smelled like vanilla candles and laundry detergent. Angela offered wine, then tea, then the kind of silence only a true friend knows how to give. I placed my ruined books on towels near the heater. I dried Mom's cardigan with a hairdryer on low heat because putting it in a machine felt wrong. On the 3rd morning, I found the envelope. It was inside the cardigan pocket, sealed in cream paper, my name written in Mom's careful, slanted handwriting. Not Nora, but Eleanor, the name she used when she wanted me to remember I had been a whole person before the family made me small. My hands went cold before I opened it. Inside was 1 page. "If Caleb has forced you out, do not argue with him. Do not sign anything. Do not threaten him. Go to Patricia Sloan at 210 East Broad Street and take the red binder from the cedar chest in the greenhouse. Your grandmother knows. I am sorry I could not fix the pain sooner. I fixed what I could." I read it 3 times. The cedar chest was in the greenhouse, a small glass structure behind the garage, where Mom started seedlings every spring. Caleb had changed the house locks, but he did not know about the side gate key hidden in the hollow birdhouse on the fence. He had never known where Mom kept practical things. Practical things were women's work. At 6:12 the next morning, before sunrise, I parked 2 streets away. The neighborhood was quiet except for the low hum of a garbage truck and the hiss of tires on wet pavement. The air smelled like damp soil and old leaves. I wore black jeans, a navy parka, and the flat shoes I used for hospital rounds. No drama, no confrontation, just entry through a gate I had opened since childhood. The greenhouse glass was fogged from the inside. I found the cedar chest under a tarp beside empty terracotta pots. The brass latch was stiff. When it opened, the smell of cedar rose up sharp and clean, cutting through the damp earth. Inside was the red binder, 2 flash drives taped to the front cover, and a small velvet bag containing Mom's wedding ring. I sat on an overturned bucket and opened the binder. The first page was a notarized deed transfer dated 5 years earlier. The house at 416 Sycamore Hill Road had been transferred from Thomas and Miriam Whitaker jointly into the Miriam Whitaker Revocable Trust. The recording number was stamped by Franklin County. The second page showed the trust amendment naming me as successor trustee and sole beneficiary of the residence. My pulse slowed. The third section was bigger. Bank statements, brokerage accounts, Life insurance documents. A note from Grandma Evelyn showing an initial gift of $425,000 placed into an irrevocable trust 8 years earlier. Monthly statements showed growth to $1,387,214.62 as of April 30th. I stopped breathing for a second. Not because of the money, not exactly. Because of the dates. 8 years ago was the year Dad told me no one would fund extra schooling for a girl. That same summer, Mom and Grandma had built a foundation under my feet without saying a word. Then I reached the yellow tab marked Caleb. That was where grief became math. There were photocopies of loan applications. A home equity line of credit for $92,000 opened 18 months earlier using Dad's signature while Dad was recovering from a stroke and could barely hold a fork. A forged, durable power of attorney uploaded to Midland Union Bank from an IP address registered to Caleb's office in Dublin, Ohio. 173-44-1986. A second electronic signature, supposedly Mom's, attached to a document at 2:06 a.m. on a date when she was inpatient at Riverside Mercy, receiving IV antiemetics and unable to sign discharge paperwork without help. Mom had circled the timestamps in red. There were also screenshots from Lauren's public social media. New Cartier bracelet, $7,800. Cabo vacation, $14,200. Private school tuition deposit, $18,500. All posted within 9 days of the home equity disbursement. I kept turning pages. Caleb had not simply expected an inheritance. He had borrowed against one he did not own. He had used Dad's declining health, Mom's illness, and the family's old gender rules as cover. The binder included emails Mom had forwarded to Patricia Sloan, recordings of voicemail messages, certified mail receipts, and a memo from a forensic accountant noting potential bank fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, and tax exposure. The last page was handwritten. Nora, if you are reading this, I am gone or too sick to stand beside you, so let the document stand there instead. I closed the binder and listened to the greenhouse heater tick in the corner. That was my mother's voice now. Patricia Sloan's office was on the 8th floor of a limestone building that looked too old to care about anyone's panic. The lobby smelled like floor wax and burnt coffee from a machine near the mailroom. When Patricia opened her office door, she did not look surprised to see me holding the red binder against my chest. She was in her 60s, with silver hair cut blunt at her jaw and eyes that missed nothing. "You found it," she said. "I found it." "Did you sign anything?" "No." Her shoulders lowered half an inch. "Good." For the next 2 hours, Patricia walked me through my mother's architecture. That was the word she used. Architecture. Not a plan, not revenge, not a secret. Architecture. Mom had spent years moving weight from weak beams to strong ones, anticipating exactly where the house would collapse when Dad died and Caleb reached for everything. The residence belonged to Mom's trust. The investment trust was irrevocable and protected. The life insurance, $600,000, named me directly. Dad's will did favor Caleb heavily, but Dad's estate was smaller than Caleb believed because the house was no longer part of it. Then Patricia turned to the yellow section. "This is separate," she said. "And serious." "How serious?" "Federal serious." She explained that forging signatures to obtain a bank loan was not a family disagreement. Using electronic communications to transmit fraudulent documents could become wire fraud. Using a parent's identity and medical incapacity to secure funds could trigger state charges, federal bank inquiries, and IRS review if the loan proceeds had been misreported. The room went quiet except for the radiator knocking in the wall. "What do we do?" I asked. Patricia looked at the binder. "We let him talk first." Caleb called that evening at 8:03. I put him on speaker while Patricia listened from her office line. Ohio is a one-party consent state, and Patricia had already reminded me twice. Caleb did not bother with greetings. "Last chance," he said. $12,000. You sign the release by Friday. After that, I file to have you removed for trespassing and estate interference. I stared at the red binder on Patricia's desk. The leather cover looked almost black under the lamp. "I'm not signing." "You think Mom left you something?" He laughed. "She didn't have anything." "Then why do you need my signature?" The silence lasted 4 seconds. "Because clean paperwork matters," he said. "Yes," I said, "it does." Patricia wrote one word on her legal pad and turned it toward me. "Good." The probate hearing was set for the following Thursday at the Franklin County Courthouse. Not a private will reading in a quiet office, as Caleb had wanted, but an emergency status conference because Patricia filed a motion regarding unlawful exclusion from trust property and potential interference with estate assets. Caleb arrived with Lauren, his attorney, and the expression of a man prepared to perform grief for an audience. The hallway outside courtroom 5B smelled like wet wool, coffee, and the lemon cleaner they used on the floors. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A deputy stood near the metal detector, his radio crackling softly. I sat on a wooden bench with the red binder on my lap and my mother's wedding ring in my coat pocket. Caleb looked at the binder and smirked. "Still playing nurse detective?" he asked. I did not answer. Lauren leaned close enough for me to smell her perfume, something floral and expensive. "You should have taken the money." I looked at her bracelet, the Cartier one from the screenshot. "I know where it came from," I said. Her face changed before she could stop it. Inside the courtroom, Judge Marlene Whitcomb presided from behind a high bench with a seal of Ohio mounted above her shoulder. She was not dramatic. She was not warm. She was the kind of judge who read everything before anyone spoke and had no patience for people who confused confidence with evidence. Caleb's attorney went first. He described my brother as the responsible son, the natural heir, the person best positioned to preserve family assets. He described me as emotionally unstable, financially dependent, and unwilling to accept our father's wishes. He said Caleb had only secured the house because I had become disruptive after the funeral. Caleb nodded at all the right moments. Then Judge Whitcomb asked him directly, "Did you remove Ms. Whitaker's possessions from 416 Sycamore Hill Road?" Caleb straightened. "I arranged for her abandoned items to be placed outside so she could retrieve them." "Were they protected from weather?" "I don't recall the weather that morning." Rain tapped lightly against the courtroom windows. Judge Whitcomb made a note. "Did Ms. Whitaker live there during your mother's illness?" "She stayed sometimes." Patricia stood. "Your Honor, we have employment records, hospice logs, pharmacy pickup receipts, and security camera timestamps showing Ms. Whitaker resided there continuously for 21 months while providing care." Caleb's jaw moved once. Judge Whitcomb looked at him over her glasses. "Mr. Whitaker, were you involved in your mother's care?" "I visited when business allowed." "How often?" He hesitated. "I don't have an exact count." Patricia opened the red binder. The sound was small, paper against metal rings, nothing more, but the room shifted around it. 4 visits, Patricia said. June 3rd, November 22nd, February 14th, and April 9th. Total combined time inside the residence, 3 hours and 46 minutes, based on doorbell camera logs preserved by Mrs. Miriam Whitaker. Caleb's attorney turned toward him sharply. That was the first crack. The second came when Patricia introduced the trust deed. Caleb laughed before he could stop himself. "That's impossible," he said. "The house was Dad's." Judge Whitcomb looked up. "Mr. Whitaker, control your responses." Patricia handed copies to the clerk, opposing counsel, and the judge. The deed was recorded 5 years ago. Instrument number 2019-0487712. The property was transferred to the Miriam Whitaker Revocable Trust. Upon Mrs. Whitaker's death, the residence passes to Ms. Eleanor Nora Whitaker. The courtroom became so quiet, I could hear Lauren's bracelet slide down her wrist. Caleb stared at the page. Dad would never agree to that. "He signed it," Patricia said, "in front of a notary, before his stroke." Lauren whispered, "Caleb." But Patricia was not finished. She presented the irrevocable trust. Initial funding, $425,000 from Evelyn Brooks, my grandmother. Current value, $1,387,214.62. Sole beneficiary, me. She presented the life insurance. $600,000. Beneficiary, me. She presented Mom's letter, the one Patricia read, in a voice steady enough to carry every word without turning it into theater. My mother wrote that love without fairness becomes another kind of violence. She wrote that Caleb had been given opportunities, cash, tuition, introductions, protection, and excuses. She wrote that I had been given duty and called lucky to have it. She wrote that leaving me the house was not punishment. It was balance. It was correction. It was her final act as my mother. I kept my eyes on the table. If I looked up, I might have broken. Caleb did not break. Not yet. He reached for anger because anger was the only tool our father had taught him to use. "This is manipulation," he said. "She poisoned Mom against me." Judge Whitcomb's voice cut through the room. "Mr. Whitaker." "No, Your Honor, she did. She moved in, controlled the medications, controlled access, controlled everything. She probably made Mom sign whatever she wanted." There it was, the lie Patricia had been waiting for. Patricia turned one tab in the binder. "Your Honor, because Mr. Whitaker has now alleged undue influence and document irregularity, we need to address a related matter involving signatures and financial instruments." Caleb's attorney stood quickly. "Your Honor, I would request a recess before any new allegations are introduced." Judge Whitcomb looked at Patricia. "Are these allegations in your filing?" "Yes, Your Honor, Exhibits G through N." The judge reviewed her screen. The courtroom waited. Somewhere in the hallway, a cart squeaked past the door. Caleb rubbed his hands together under the table. Lauren stared straight ahead, her lips pressed into a thin, white line. "Proceed carefully," Judge Whitcomb said. Patricia placed the forged power of attorney on the document camera. Dad's signature appeared enlarged on the monitor. Then she placed a verified signature from his cardiology consent form beside it. Even from across the room, the difference was obvious. The real signature trembled upward because Dad's hand had weakened after the stroke. The lone signature flowed smoothly, confidently, like someone imitating memory instead of movement. Patricia's voice stayed calm. Midland Union Bank received the electronic power of attorney at 2:06 a.m. on February 3rd from IP address 173.44.19.86. That IP address is assigned to Whitaker Development Group, Mr. Caleb Whitaker's business office. The same packet included an electronic signature attributed to Mrs. Miriam Whitaker. At that time, Mrs. Whitaker was admitted to Riverside Mercy Hospital, room 614, under medication that required assistance for all legal and medical paperwork. Caleb whispered something to his attorney. Patricia continued. The bank then approved a $92,000 home equity line. Funds were wired in 3 transfers: $31,500 to Whitaker Development Group, $18,500 to Brookstone Academy, and $14,200 to a travel vendor in Miami. The remaining amount was withdrawn in cashier's checks. Lauren closed her eyes. That was the second crack becoming a split. Judge Whitcomb leaned back. "Mr. Whitaker, are you prepared to explain this?" His attorney put a hand on his sleeve, but Caleb shook it off. Pride is loudest right before it dies. "My parents authorized me to handle expenses," he said. "Do you have documentation?" The family understood. "That is not documentation." His attorney murmured, "Caleb, stop." But Caleb could not stop. He had spent his whole life being rescued from consequences by people who loved the version of him they had invented. He looked at me with pure hatred, as if I had forged the documents by exposing them. "She's doing this because she's bitter," he said. "She couldn't build her own life, so she wants mine." I looked at him then. For the first time since the porch, I spoke directly to my brother. "No, Caleb. I built mine while you borrowed against Mom's." No one moved. The deputy near the wall shifted his stance. Patricia closed the binder halfway, then opened the final pocket. Inside was a letter from Midland Union Bank's fraud department, a referral confirmation from the Ohio Attorney General's Elder Abuse Unit, and a notice from IRS Criminal Investigation acknowledging receipt of related financial records. Caleb's attorney went pale. "Your Honor," Patricia said, "we are requesting immediate restoration of Ms. Whitaker's access to the trust property, preservation orders for all financial records connected to the home equity line, and referral of the suspected fraudulent instruments to the appropriate authorities." Judge Whitcomb did not need long. She ordered Caleb to surrender all keys, garage remotes, security codes, and access credentials by 5 p.m. She prohibited him from entering the property. She froze disputed estate distributions pending review. She referred the questionable documents for investigation and warned Caleb that further misrepresentation to the court could lead to sanctions or contempt. The gavel struck once. It sounded like a door closing, but the federal hammer did not fall in the courtroom. It fell 6 weeks later, at 9:27 on a Tuesday morning, in the lobby of Whitaker Development Group. I know because Patricia called me afterward, and because the affidavit later became public record. 2 agents from IRS Criminal Investigation arrived with a postal inspector and a detective from the Elder Abuse Unit. Caleb's office had glass walls and a reception desk with white orchids Lauren had chosen for the opening party. Employees watched as agents carried out laptops, file boxes, and the small black server from the back room. Caleb was not handcuffed dramatically in front of a crowd. Real consequences are usually quieter. He was asked to come with them. He refused at first. Then an agent showed him the warrant, and the receptionist started crying. The sound of handcuffs, according to one employee who later testified, was softer than expected. 2 clicks. That was all. 2 clicks ended a lifetime of special treatment. The charges took months to resolve. Bank fraud, wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, filing false business deductions connected to funds he claimed were legitimate loans. His attorney negotiated, argued, delayed, and billed him at $475 an hour, while Lauren deleted old vacation photos from social media and quietly listed their Dublin house. Deleting photos did not delete bank records. Caleb eventually accepted a plea: 30 months in federal prison, restitution to the bank, a civil settlement returning misused funds to the estate, loss of his real estate license, 2 years of supervised release. The country club membership vanished first, then the office lease, then the house. Lauren filed for divorce before sentencing and described herself in court papers as financially misled, which was not the same as innocent, but apparently easier to print. At sentencing, Caleb finally looked small, not humble, not fully. Men like him do not become new people in a single courtroom. But for one brief moment, after the judge asked whether he wished to speak, Caleb turned toward me and said, "I thought it was supposed to be mine." That was the closest thing to truth he had ever given me, I answered without standing. "I know." He waited, maybe for forgiveness, maybe for anger, maybe for me to become the sister he remembered, the useful one, the one who smoothed the tablecloth after everyone else spilled wine. I gave him nothing to hold. After the sentencing, I went back to Sycamore Hill alone. The house was quiet. Not empty exactly. Houses remember. The kitchen still held the faint smell of rosemary from the plant by the back steps. The upstairs hallway still creaked in the same place. The old percolator still sat on the counter, useless and stubborn, and for reasons I cannot explain, I cleaned it instead of throwing it away. Then I opened every window. Cold air moved through the rooms, lifting dust, loosening the stale scent of lilies and grief. I packed Dad's golf trophies into boxes for donation. I kept Mom's gardening gloves. I had the locks changed again, not because Caleb could enter, but because I wanted the sound to belong to me. The new lock clicked cleanly. In May, the lavender came back. I did not sell the house. Not right away. People expected me to, because everyone expects a wounded person to run from the place where the wound happened. Instead, I repaired it. I replaced the roof over the greenhouse, painted the kitchen a soft green Mom would have loved, and turned Dad's old study into a small office where I now review medical fraud cases for a regional compliance firm. The red binder sits on the shelf behind my desk. Not as a weapon anymore, as a boundary. Grandma Evelyn moved into the downstairs guest room that autumn after she decided 92 was too old to pretend she enjoyed living alone. She drinks coffee at 5:40 every morning, complains about television judges, and talks to Mom's lavender like it can answer back. Sometimes I find her in the greenhouse, with one hand resting on the cedar chest. "She was braver than people knew," Grandma said once. "Yes," I told her, "she was." And maybe that is the part people misunderstand about revenge. They imagine shouting, they imagine shattered plates, public screaming, someone dragged away while violins swell in the background. But the kind that saved me did not look like that. It looked like a mother sitting in a law office while chemotherapy bruises marked her hands. It looked like a grandmother moving money before greedy people knew there was money to move. It looked like timestamps, deeds, visitor logs, IP addresses, bank wires, certified mail receipts, and one red binder waiting in a cedar chest. It looked like patience. For 32 years, I thought family meant enduring whatever people did to you because the same blood moved through your veins. I thought loyalty meant silence. I thought being useful was the price of being loved. My brother believed that too, right up until the moment the paperwork disagreed with him. Blood makes relatives. Loyalty makes family. My mother understood that before I did. She could not undo every dinner where Dad ignored me, every check he wrote for Caleb. Every year I swallowed my own anger because the house needed peace more than it needed justice. But she could make sure the final record told the truth. She could make sure the daughter who carried the weight did not leave empty-handed. And she did. So when people ask whether I feel guilty about what happened to Caleb, I tell them the same thing every time. I did not create the evidence. I did not forge the signatures. I did not wire the money, lie to the bank, mislead the court, or throw my sister's life onto a wet lawn 5 days after our parents were buried. I opened the binder. That was all. If this story made you think about your own family, write your age and what you would have done in the comments. And if you believe the quiet people in a family are often the ones carrying the heaviest load, subscribe to the channel for more stories like this.